So I think Borderlands 4 is going to potentially have some of the longest grinds in the Borderlands franchise, at least in terms of getting some specific weapon roll with all of the exact parts you want. But they are also implementing some other systems into Borderlands 4 that will make this grind much more fun and much more easy when it comes to quality of life additions and just allowing you to stay in the game, farming in the ways you want to farm. And that's primarily what I want to go over in this video, is how Borderlands 4 is completely changing the way you're going to farm compared to all the other previous Borderlands games. Now, first, I think we should quickly go over why Borderlands 4 is going to potentially have such a crazy long farm, especially if you're looking for, say, a specific item with specific weapon part. And this primarily comes down to the licensed part system. So in Borderlands 4, they're harkening back to Borderlands 1 or Borderlands 2 weapon part systems, where you can get a weapon where the kind of base of the weapon, a specific weapon manufacturer, but then all of the other parts on that weapon can kind of randomly roll from any of the other weapon manufacturers. And in Borderlands 4, I think it's going to be the craziest. Any weapon could be any of those 8 manufacturers as their kind of base or the body of the weapon. But then we have 3 additional part-only manufacturers. So you get a weapon with one of those 8 bases, and then every single one of those parts could be any of the 11 total manufacturers. So you have all of these ridiculous amounts of combinations you can have for pretty much any weapon in the game, and all of the weapon manufacturers' special effects or behaviors can pretty much be on any weapon. Like the developers even specified that, say, the TDR throw mechanic can be on pretty much any weapon in the game. So you could get a specific legendary weapon that has some crazy effect, but then you could get the TDR reload throw effect on that weapon by getting a specific roll of it. So just the amount of rolls that's going to come with this system is absolutely ridiculous, and the main reason why the farm could potentially be so ridiculously long. And this weapon part system doesn't only work on weapons, it will also work on things like your ordnance slot. So for your grenade mods or any of the other weapons that can be in the new ordnance slot, which is any heavy weapons, so like grenade launchers, rocket launchers, big machine guns, laser guns. So you have a lot of different slots that all tie back into this weapon part system. So to get the best rolls on, say, a weapon and an ordnance slot could take just a ridiculous amount of time. And when we're specifically talking about legendary weapons, we know legendaries are going to be much more rare than Borderlands 3. Specifically, the developers talked about that Borderlands 3 had way too many legendary drops, and that they are changing it for Borderlands 4 because they want legendaries to be legendary again. They want their legendary powers to be ridiculously strong, and they want them to be really rare, so you're not going to be finding them all the time. And this will definitely extend the farm of Borderlands 4, especially as you get into the end game, and especially if you're trying to get every legendary item or every legendary weapon in the game, or even just farming one specific legendary to get those specific weapon parts on it. Them being a lower drop chance just means that the farm will generally be longer, but I think this is actually a really good thing. The sheer amount of loot and legendary loot you got in Borderlands 3 was actually one of the bigger things as to why I stopped playing the game, because you would just be doing any content and everything would just start dropping legendaries. So you'd spend like half of your playtime just looking at the ground, looking through all the legendaries instead of actually playing the game. So that brings us to what systems are they implementing into Borderlands 4 that helps alleviate this farm, or at least make it much more enjoyable to actually do the farm itself. And the first one is dedicated drops on launch. This is something we didn't have in Borderlands 3 that was added sometime after launch, but this is a massive plus for the game in general. And they specified that every mini boss and boss on the launch of Borderlands 4 will have dedicated drops on them. And we do know it seems they're going a bit more into bosses for Borderlands 4. Seems like they want to make them a lot bigger, a lot crazier, have more interesting mechanics. And outside of just kind of the normal bosses, we know that vaults are being called vault dungeons. So those may have more impactful bosses in them. They may have multiple bosses in these vault dungeons. And we do also know that with the seamless world of Borderlands 4 that there are going to be world bosses. So pretty much any content you're doing in Borderlands 4, anywhere you're going, you have the opportunity to be coming across bosses that all have dedicated drops. So at least specifically when going for those dedicated drops, you have a lot more of a targeted way to go and farm those, even though you still have all the randomization that can occur once you actually get one of those drops. Now, because Borderlands 4 has this massive seamless world, I think the new movement mechanics are actually going to help you farm much more efficiently, because not only do we have all of the new player movement mechanics like gliding, double jumping, wall climbing, mantling, and then we have all the previous movement mechanics like sliding and everything else like that. We're also going to now just be able to digistruct our vehicles wherever we are. So kind of how sparrows work in Destiny 2, except these are still just Borderlands vehicles. You can now just spawn them anywhere instead of having to go to a station to do that. So you'll be able to just spawn your vehicles where you are, meaning you'll be able to travel to areas much more quickly and much more easily, meaning that's going to reduce your farming time by at least a little bit, depending on what you're trying to farm. And Gearbox also had a panel at the most recent PAX East show where they did give us a bit of a tease at more movement that could potentially be in Borderlands 4, and more specifically, it sounds like you'll be able to build your character to have a very fast movement, because they were kind of talking about what different pieces of content there will be in Borderlands 4, specifically saying that they want to develop all these pieces of content to where you didn't just have to go farm bosses. There's actually going to be a bunch of other pieces of content that you can go farm for different pieces of loot in the game, and that one of the things they want to do is kind of allow you to make your Vault Hunter really good at farming in the open world and having a lot more movement capabilities with that, so potentially just crazy amounts of movement speed or other things like that. So we don't have a ton of information on how that's going to work, but it sounds like they're trying to allow you to have a much more movement oriented build. But everything I've gone over so far, I think, is secondary to the main new system being implemented that I think is not only going to make farming in Borderlands 4 much more efficient, but it's also just going to make it much more fun. And that is the mission and boss replay system. So in Borderlands 4, we know we will easily be able to replay any mission or reset any boss as many times as we want. And this is from Moxie's Encore system. And I'm not actually sure if we've been shown the system itself, but at pretty much any mission location or any boss area in the game, there will be this machine that after you complete the mission or after you defeat that boss, you'll be able to go to the machine and just activate it, and it will reset a boss arena, reset the boss, or it will allow you to replay that specific mission. Now, there's actually a bunch of different reasons why this is so strong. The first and main one is we don't have to go to the main menu and load back into the game to reset a boss like we've done with pretty much every previous Borderlands game. And this is one of the best parts about this. Not having to exit the game to the main menu, load back in, wait for everything to load in, and then go into the boss arena, face the boss, and then redo it. That has always felt very old in the Borderlands franchise, where it feels like you're playing for like a minute, or depending on the boss, maybe you're instantly killing it, and then you're spending most of your time going through load screens instead of playing the game. But with this Encore system, you kill the boss, you go interact with this Encore machine, it resets a boss, and you go back in and fight it. You don't have to exit the game, and it feels like you're actually just playing the game the whole time. And likewise with the mission replay system, this fixes a bunch of issues. First off, a lot of unique items, so different rarity items like blue or purple items that have red text on them, meaning they are a unique item. Usually in pretty much every previous Borderlands game, you would essentially be like save scumming or doing some file workarounds to constantly replay the end of a quest or a mission to try to get like a specific role of that unique item. And then once you got to max level, a lot of the lower level max level items didn't end up scaling up very well, so they didn't end up being super strong, even though the effects could be really strong. And then you just also had missions or quests where maybe they were really fun to play, or maybe people want to replay them, and you couldn't really do that. You could do that when you got into like true Vault Hunter mode, which is essentially a new game plus, but you couldn't just replay missions or quests whenever you wanted to. And now you'll be able to do that in Borderlands 4, meaning any quest reward item, so more specifically any of those unique items, you'll be able to just replay that mission as you get into the end game if you think that's going to be a really good weapon. And this will probably also add a little bit of time onto like the potential grind for Borderlands 4, because now you're adding in these unique quest reward items that you could replay in any difficulty and at any level you are, meaning you can just scale up those mission rewards as much as you want, because you can just replay the missions whenever you want. And because of the licensed weapon parts system, and presumably that system working with all of these quest reward items, you could specifically want to be farming a mission to get a unique weapon from the quest reward with specific rolls on it, and you could just be doing that as a farm you're doing for a while until you get the roll you want. And while this will extend the farm, if those items are something you're searching for, just the fact that you can reset and replay these bosses or missions just by activating this machine and without having to do any workarounds or load back to the main menu and load back in, that'll just make farming in Borderlands 4, I think, the most enjoyable it's been in any previous Borderlands game. So overall, this is one of the things I'm most excited for. I think this is just going to make playing the game, and especially farming into the end game, just the most enjoyable it's been in the Borderlands franchise. Just being able to continue to play the game and not have to load to the main menu, then load back in to replay a boss is going to be honestly one of the best parts. And even though the farm could potentially be the longest in the series, the farm will also be the most enjoyable in the series. So I am very excited to just go and start those grinds on whatever boss has the item you're looking for. But that's all I want to go over, so thanks for watching.